Hi there, this is Curtis Dieter. Like all of you, I am many things. A husband, a father, and a son. I'm a hard worker and a dreamer, a writer and a publisher, but underneath everything, I am made of rust and glass. You are listening to Proud to Be of Rust and Glass, a podcast series of conversations surrounding the creative journey and all the good and ill associated with making great art in the Midwest. It is the human side of colors brushed onto canvas, of words scribbled between covers, of sweat and grit bled into telling our stories. Real stories about real people doing what we love best, making great art. Hi there, welcome to today's episode of Proud to Be of Rust and Glass. Today's guest is artist Stephen J Athanas. Stephen J is a mixed bag when it comes to his chosen creative outlets. He's an artist, a poet, a musician, and he even tried his hat at being a dancer one time. His work is often punny and flexes his penchant for wordplay while simultaneously pointing a critical eye at some of life's mundane intricacies. Stephen, great to talk with you again. I'm so glad you could join us today.
Nice to be here. Who told you about the dance?
You did. You were very excited about it and maybe a little bit shamed too. I'm not sure. A combination of both.
Yeah.
So I want to jump right into talking about your art.
Let's.
How would you describe yourself as an artist today?
Well, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I don't limit myself to any one medium. I did spend 5 decades being a musician, seeking fame and fortune and failing. So after a while, I said, let's try something new. I have a major in art educations, and I one education, and I usually, even when I was playing in bands, I always had a sketchbook with me. So it seemed a natural progression. My work is both 2D and 3D. The 2D, more often than not, shares the canvas or paper with a poem, P-O-M-E. That's my term because I'm not certainly any Keats or E.E. Cummings or even
You're a breed
Shel
of your
Silverstein.
own, right?
Yeah. Although I aspire. I think when Shel Silverstein passed, I said, now there's a seat that's vacant. I'm going to fill it. I'm bald, and I have a facial hair, so I'm going for it.
And I can definitely get a lot of that influence in some of your stuff.
Yes.
The very wordplay focused,
Absolutely.
sort of lighthearted views on maybe some issues that aren't necessarily as lighthearted as you can make them.
Yes.
But you said you used to be very involved in music. Are you still playing music at
No.
any level, or?
No, I'm not. I'm not locking that door and throwing away the key. But right now, I'm pretty darn happy just making visual art.
Okay.
So we'll see.
What reasons do you think you sort of got away from the music and into the art more?
I got old, Curtis. Yeah. Well, the truth of the matter is that when I performed, if you'd ever seen me, I wasn't the greatest vocalist on the planet, but what I lacked in singing capabilities, I would make up in buffoonery and jump around like a goofball on stage. And as I got older, the knees got a little creaky and back got a little, so it's best to put that on the back burner for now.
Yeah, as somebody who, I wouldn't say I'm old, but I played a lot of basketball, I skateboarded a lot.
Yeah.
I've got creaky knees too, so I 100% understand
You can
that.
relate, yeah.
How has your art sort of evolved as you've grown, as you've moved into different sort of forms?
That's a good question. I still stay with some of the same things I've done, variations thereof, i.e. the poems and the paintings. So as I get older, I'm trying to explore new arenas. I work primarily with watercolor on my 2-dimensional art because oils intimidate me, and I've always been scared of them, so I steer clear of that. But yeah, I'm not afraid to really throw something different in the mix. So
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And besides your art and poetry, you've dabbled in a lot of sort of mixed media stuff with the two of those. You want to talk about any of your favorite pieces or how you sort of bridged the gap between your art and your poetry?
May I yank one out?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is 2 pieces. Separate. This is a recent piece. I've done a few of these. They're called aquariums, F-A-U-X, meaning fake aquariums.
I get kind of a Dr. Seuss sort of feel from looking at that, and I love it.
Yeah. And it's like you said, it's a mixed media, utilizing nature, the sticks, and I use a lot of wire preferably rusty wire. I like the color and the texture from rusty wire. So be advised, if and when you buy a piece of my work, you should be up to date with your tetanus shots.
That's always good advice.
Yeah. But then it's also got Sculpey, which is a polymer clay,
Okay.
which I don't have access to a kiln, so I have to use that. And then the waves and the wings and the dirty cloud are tissue paper applied with a 50-50 mix of water and Elmer's glue, and then dried, and then put some polyurethane on them.
Very cool. And is this type of art, is this something that you kind of make up as you go, or do you have a pretty good idea of what it's going to be and what you're going to use before you sit down?
You know, I was thinking about that a month or so ago. I never do sketches.
Mm-hmm.
I just put my hands on the materials and see what becomes of it. And that's pretty much the same way with the 2D stuff, too. Like I said, with the sketchbook, I used to be better at this than I am now. I think it's, again, my declining cranium. But I would just put pencil to paper and see what happens to it and develop it from there. So.
Okay. Very cool. That's kind of the kind of writer I am. I've been trying to sort of plan a little bit better as I've been getting, some experience. But it is nice to just sort of sit down and come up with what you come up with.
Exactly.
See where it takes you, and you're always surprised at the end of it.
Yep. Rewrites. Me?
That's one of the hardest things is to write something that you love, that you know is flawed, and then tell yourself, so if I really want this to be accessible, maybe I should rewrite it.
Yeah, look at it again. Yeah.
So we mentioned that a lot of your stuff is sort of humorous in nature and points at the lighter sides of life.
Just don't call it cute.
Cute, no, absolutely
I do not like that word.
Absolutely not. I think that's not something many artists would want people to say about their work, unless it's very specific to that kind of niche market there. Yeah. Humor is sort of therapeutic. Has it been that way for you at all?
Yeah. It's, I mean, not only with my artwork, but, a big fan of movies and stand-up and those things that just kind of allow you to escape this nasty world that we find ourselves in. So it helps a lot. Yeah.
Was your work always sort of a humorous nature, or is that something that's
I don't think I think I had I think it's part of my persona that obviously stems from my musical, stuff that I used to do, in that I just don't like to. There's always an element of self-deprecation and jabbing at the gorilla in the cage.
Right. That totally makes sense to me. As far as between your art and your poetry, do you have one that you prefer over the other? Is there struggles that you find with poetry, with art?
Yeah, there is. I don't know that one between the 2D and the 3D stuff. I find that my muse goes on vacation more often than I'd like.
Yeah, kind of poke it to come back.
Exactly. Do some magic charm to bring her back. But yeah, then I start getting kind of freaked out that what if that was it? What if your last outburst was it, and now you got to rest on your laurels?
Right.
Forget it. Keep prodding.
I love it. Speaking of keeping on prodding, do you have any sort of projects coming up that you're working on that you're excited to sort of get out into the world?
Yes. The one I'm primarily excited about is University Press at UT is in the spring going to release a book of my two-dimensional stuff.
That's all. That's
amazing.
amazing.
My paintings and my poems.
They've done a lot of really great local stuff
They
and regional
really have.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's very cool. We've been able to work with them 3 or 4 times at an author fair that we do in Harrisburg. Yeah. They always set up a booth, and I've looked through a lot of their works, and they're beautiful. They do soft cover, hardcover books,
and they run the gamut.
They do,
from history of nurses to a bar in Toledo, and now they're going to put out this silly collection of drawings that this weirdo did.
Well, that's going to be a really colorful feather to put in your hat, though.
Yeah. That's God.
Awesome.
Yeah. Exactly.
And you said that's coming out sometime next year, or
in the spring.
In the spring. Very cool. Very cool. I'll definitely have to check that out.
Yeah. God willing, and the creek don't rise.
I'm lucky enough that I get to see a lot of your art on social media.
Sure.
But I think the people who might not have access to that, having it on their bookshelf.
Yeah.
You're gonna walk into somebody's house one day, and you're gonna see University of Toledo Press.
That's right.
You're going to have your name right on the top. You're going to have one of your, silliest ones on the front, I'm sure. Not cute.
Right.
Silly is a little bit different than cute.
And then I can die and go to heaven.
Right. I love it. So you brought some art to show us. Did you
Yes.
happen to have any poems that you'd like to read?
Curtis, what do you think? You think I'm an amateur?
So
Do you want to go with
we can
the,
talk about it, and that's all one thing, but actually, having our listeners be able to hear a couple.
Right, exactly. This is one, it's called 2024, and it's political, which I don't often do. I find that I come up short when I try and do political, although I've got a couple pieces. But a description for those of you out in radio land, old terminology. It's a picture of an elephant and a donkey, the two symbols of the Democrats and the Republicans, just glaring at each other.
They look like they can't get far enough away from each other.
Exactly. And if I may, I will. It's a short little thing. Election year, again it's here. We know what that portends. A year of lies and alibis. Who wins? Well, that depends. Depends on money, depends on time, yet rarely on the truth. Depends upon the populace who'll hit the voting booth. Unless you're one of those that think there's nothing one can do. The whole thing's rigged, the jig's been jigged, and all of us are screwed. Yet who's to say who's right or wrong? There is no master plan. But just remember that come November, the bleep could hit the fan.
Poetry snap here.
So, I mean, even though it's broaching a serious topic, it's still light and
And I love the rhythm and the cadence of the words and the very obvious way they're written to be read out loud.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm not a poet of any stature, so it makes me.
You start to find that poetry it's not just poems about love and the heart and poetry.
Right.
I mean, we had somebody read poems about a factory. We had somebody read poems about PBS, which was really cool since this podcast series has been sponsored by WGTE.
Right.
We have poems about love and arithmetic, and there's everything.
Yeah, absolutely. So. Everything is fair game. Can I do another one? Quick?
Absolutely.
This one's called "If a Man in a Chicken Mask," and it's got a picture of a man riding a bicycle with a chicken mask on his head, and there's a cartoon balloon that says "Cluck," and he's zooming down the street, and there's feathers flying out behind him, and then under the poem there's a chicken in a nest, an actual chicken, and the chicken is saying, "Damn fool."
And these are both original watercolors that go with the original inking of the poem, too. That's really cool.
Yeah. It says, if a man in a chicken mask riding a bike comes zooming through your hood, you just might feel a bit surreal and think that ain't good. 'Cause normally one hopes to see young children out and playing, not a grown man wearing a chicken mask. It don't seem right, I'm just saying. Still, don't call the cops, don't pull out the stops, don't let your heart pace quicken. This ain't no curse. There are things much worse than a grown man who thinks he's a chicken. Let the incident go, for as we all know, this world's a battered stew. And what's not to like about a dude on a bike going cock-a-doodle-doo?
I love it. Thank you so much for sharing
Oh,
those.
my pleasure. I got a million of them.
And I'm sure they're a ton of fun to write.
Oh,
too,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So have you always lived in the region, in the Midwest? And
Yeah. I spent short times in Baltimore, Ann Arbor, Cincinnati, West Palm Beach, but always come back here.
Okay. So Toledo area is kind of home for you?
Yes, absolutely. And the reason was when I was playing music, I gained a notoriety with my bands, and so it was always easier for me to pick the cream of the crop musicians here than to go to a new town and start from square one. So somehow I always got drawn back.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And you mentioned we do have, some very talented people here.
Yeah. The music scene is incredible. Yeah.
What makes you sort of proud to be of Rust and Glass as far as being a creator in the Midwest and calling here home?
It's the exposure that I get. Like I said, it's easier. Even with my art now, I maintain this certain notoriety, big fish, small pond. kind of mindset, and it's people know me, and it's nice to be recognized, and it's nice to have your art recognized, and when I was doing the music too, so it's the familiarity, I think.
I love it. Definitely a hometown feel. And
absolutely.
We have a very supportive group of other artists and writers, and then the people that are able to support the arts outside of that community are very hands-on in doing so. So it's always a pleasure to see that.
Yeah.
Do you have any final thoughts or any words that you'd like to share with the listeners today?
I have one other project that I'd like to plug, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. I have a website. It's allthingsath.com. And one of the guy who set up my website for me is a friend of mine, former Toledoan, lives out in California now. And we started talking on the phone and recognizing the problems that the earth is facing with the environment and all that stuff, and thinking, what could we do? So we kind of chose water as our poster child, I guess you would say. And so I've designed some T-shirts that try and bring recognition, again, in a lighthearted way, bring recognition to the problem. That water is a finite source, and we're messing with it and polluting it, and yada yada yada. So there's a series of T-shirts that I have that are available on my website.
That's a great cause to sort of turn to. In this area, we have water in abundance, but we have the algal bloom problem. We have pollution problems. We have sewage problems.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say where, but where I live, we had some sewage problems over the years that weren't addressed. And then you look out west.
Yep.
You see drought. You see it gets worse and worse every year. So that's definitely something important to think about. And as artists, if we have a platform, it's good to be able to use that platform to address something like that. So I love it. Definitely we'll check that out.
Okay.
Where else other than that website can people sort of tune in and follow your journey?
There's usually some of my work at Hudson Gallery in Sylvania, and I have a presence on Facebook and Instagram and the usual rigmarole.
Okay, very cool. We will definitely have to check out more of your work. I know it's out there in abundance online, and we'll look forward to that book when it comes out next year.
Thank you.
Stephen, I really appreciate you talking with me today and discussing your art with me.
Yep. Long live art.
This has been today's episode of Proud to Be of Rust and Glass. Stephen J. epitomizes what it's like to be a bald man in America, and his artistic work is always a pleasure to digest. From musical wordplay to bad homophones, there's a lighter side to his creations. That's not to say you won't find depth, if you're willing to look a little closer, that is. I am your host and producer, Curtis Dieter. Our executive producer is Chris Pfeiffer. If you want to join the conversation, check us out at wgte.org/Rust and Glass. Until next time, thanks for listening. Now go forth and create.
WGTE. Voices around us.
WGTE is supported in part by American Rescue Plan Act funds allocated by the City of Toledo and the Lucas County Commissioners and administered by the Arts Commission.